Hey, Inspired Moneymaker. We're about to get a glimpse into the world of Jane's Addiction, Porno for Pyros, and Smashing Pumpkins. You're going to hear about being an artist, second acts in life, and coming back from near bankruptcy. Episode 240 features Etty Lau Farrell, singer, dancer, actress.
And there goes the majority of our income. And we also just had our second baby. We were a week away from bankruptcy. And I remember Perry said to me, "You are still young." I was 29 at the time. You're still young. You're still beautiful. I'm going to suggest you leave me and find someone else that can support you and give you the life and the lifestyle that you deserve, that I thought I could give you. And I said, that's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Absolutely not. We're in this together. And just think about this. A year and a half ago, I didn't even know who you were.
I'm Andy Wong, host of the Inspired Money podcast and financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. This episode is brought to you by Yachty.com. My friend Everald Reed launched Yachty to showcase Jamaica's best products and local vendors. With just a couple mouse clicks, I can treat myself to authentic Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee. We love it at our house. It's balanced, full-bodied, but without the bitterness. I also love the breadfruit chips and natural bar soaps. It's great knowing that every purchase at Yachty.com directly supports local Jamaican small businesses. You've got to try Blue Mountain coffee for yourself. Go to Yachty.com. That's YAAHDY.com. And make sure to use coupon code MONEY for 10% off your entire order. Try it and let me know what you think. We've got Etty Lau Farrell on the show. She's a professional dancer, wife and muse to rock legend Perry Farrell of Jane's Addiction and Porno for Pyros fame. This episode is about the phases of a woman's life. For Etty, that means being a dancer, wife, singer, mother, and business partner. This year, she made her first debut as a solo artist with the single He's a Rebel, which features the Kind Heaven Orchestra, husband Perry Farrell, the late Taylor Hawkins of the Foo Fighters, Mike Watt, former Pussycat doll Carmit, and the Mariachi Sol de Mexico de Jose Hernandez. It's also Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and Etty proudly protested at Stop Asian Hate demonstrations in Los Angeles. In this episode, you'll learn about growing up feeling like an outcast, going from the brink of bankruptcy to successfully rebuilding the Lollapalooza brand. And tune into the end to hear about teaching children to spread the wealth. Now let's get inspired with Etty Lau Farrell. Etty, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
Wow. You know that I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and being Hong Kong is the capital of capitalism. I don't think it was ever an introduction to money. I think that money, or the talk of money, was just always around. You come into it, whether you have it or not, is something that was very much on everyone's mind, because with Hong Kong, Hong Kong has one of the most expensive real estate in the entire world, if not the most expensive. So everyone is always working really, really hard to at least meet the standard of living in Hong Kong. So it's just been something that's always been around.
What was it like growing up? I mean, you say it was like the, like peak example of capitalism. Right. Were you an industrious child thinking about money?
I was not an industrious child. And I mean, clearly I went towards the arts, but I do remember at around, as early as I can remember, my house, they're all apartments, all the rooms except there was a bedroom, my parents' bedroom, my bedroom, and the rest of the house was the office. So during office hours, and they also work on Saturdays, half days, my home was essentially my parents' office. And I remember doing my homework on that giant, the Chinese dining room table. That would be where I would do my homework. My parents would push, their documents. They were in textiles and garment. So they would push their samples and all that aside for me to do my homework. And I just grew up very much around work all the time. But I do remember I really enjoyed growing up in Hong Kong. I really loved that, how everything is so close together. And when you go into the streets, everything's vibrant. My family, my aunt's family, are in cosmetics, retail, and they have a few shops around where we lived. So I was able to visit my cousins, my aunts, just walking down the street, and it was a lot of fun. I missed it. I miss it.
Not to mention that Cantonese food is probably one of the
Oh
best cuisines in the world.
my God. It's not necessarily the food you eat at restaurants. I think it's the street food that really is the best. So when I now go back to visit with my husband, with my children, I wouldn't necessarily take them to the beautiful high-end Michelin star rated restaurants. We would go to the markets and get the little food, they have those little carts on the street, and you kind of have to chase them around because they move around all the time. So you go to those places for food. My God, I love eating so much. I want to go back and eat.
I've heard you say that you were kind of a rebel as a kid. I think you
Yeah.
started dancing when you were 3 years old. Were you a rebel already at 3 years old?
You know, in a way I was, because in Asia, in Hong Kong, as you had mentioned, it is more of an industrial business hub, an environment. So when you're growing up there, the parents really focus on what are you going to do when you grow up that's going to make money. I went into the arts. So I guess I was a rebel in starting dancing when I was 3 years old. I started at the Royal Academy of Ballet. Yeah. And my parents thought they hoped it was going to be a fading passion, but it wasn't. I truly loved it. Yeah,
You came to the United States when you were 10. Do you still speak Cantonese?
I do. I do. I, um, I speak it fluently and I can read it, but writing it, I have a little bit of an issue. But I can read menus. That's the important thing, right? I can read menus. I can read some papers when it's not written too difficult, because I'm sure you know that Cantonese, a lot of the words that we use cannot are not necessarily written words. So the way the paper would be written, it would be more written in the Mandarin style, in the literature style. But Cantonese, I would say, is mostly slang. So I can
The
read some
most
stuff.
colorful slang.
Most colorful slang. You're right.
So, how does a classically trained dancer end up working with the likes of Madonna, Ricky Martin, Bon Jovi, and Jane's Addiction?
Motley Crue, Aerosmith. Yeah. Um, when I moved down to Los Angeles as a classically trained ballerina, I moved down, and I got on a scholarship at a professional dance studio called Edge. And we would have about 30 hours of dance classes a week. We would also have acting, voiceover, this and that. And I very quickly realized that the industry in Los Angeles, it did not favor classically trained ballerinas. Most of the jobs I would get, I would say I would be the moving background. and they were not looking for ballerinas. So when I got that scholarship, I very quickly realized that I have to start opening up and being more diverse. And I just happened to be that rock chick that loved the music, loved the culture, and you start auditioning, and those are the jobs that I landed.
You grew up in the suburbs of Seattle, in Bellevue, I think.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
you were like in the heart of grunge music, and
yes,
like the 90s were pretty awesome.
yes. But more interestingly, at Bellevue, when I was growing up, they were called the yuppies, and everyone in my school were preppy yuppie kids. I remember when I was in middle school, I was maybe one or two of the Asian people in my school. When I went to high school, there were more Asians, but I do remember one of them was adopted, and I feel like there were a few that were exchange students, and I didn't quite bond with them. By then, I was already deemed too Americanized. But growing up in Bellevue was very difficult because almost everyone was white. I take it back. Everyone was white. I can remember the two black kids in my school, the one Mexican, and the three Asian people, and I was one of them. It was difficult. But as I get into high school, Seattle had what they called the Puget Sound. So during the grunge era, you had Nirvana, Pearl Jam. I remember my friends inviting me to watch this up and coming band to rehearse in their garage called Alice in Chains. There's Mudhoney, there's Skinny Puppy. There was this huge variety of these grunge alternative bands. Of course, there was also Soundgarden. And it was brilliant. It was an incredible way to grow up because the grunge world, the alternative world was back then a fuck you to all the slick rock and roll off of Sunset Strip, like the Motley Crue, the Poison, maybe Guns N' Roses even. So they just gave little bit of alternative and a little bit of a fuck you to, am I allowed to swear? Am I allowed to swear?
Sure.
Okay, a bit of a to all the slick hair bands. So it was a really fun time to grow up in Seattle. I wish I know
Yeah, it
now
was
what
the
I
end of the
knew.
big hair.
Yeah, that's right. And I wish I know now what I know now, because I would have really had taken advantage to see all those bands play. But I didn't. So yeah.
How do you think that shaped you being, you know, among not that many other Asians growing up and feeling like you didn't quite fit in?
Oh gosh, I never quite fit in. I never did fit in. I was always, even now, it's funny because I married my husband, and his name is Perry Farrell. It's a wordplay on peripheral. He grew up on the outskirts, on the outside looking in, and so did I. Which is probably why we ended up bonding over both of us being outcasts as we were growing up. It was very, very difficult. It was in the late 80s, early 90s. And especially when you're in a town where everyone is white, they just didn't quite understand diversity or culture. And when you're growing up, you wanted to fit in. You don't necessarily like the way you look, and you're not comfortable in your skin. In fact, there's a very good book called, God, I forgot the name of the author. I want to say Celeste, cannot pronounce her last name, NG. She was the one that wrote Little Fires Everywhere, that became a Hulu series. But she had a book called Everything I Never Told You. And in it, I remember there was a paragraph that really spoke to me. And basically, it said that you would be at a store paying for groceries. And, people are looking at you, they're talking to you. And you glance up at a reflection and you realize, oh, who is that Asian person that looks different than everyone else? and then you realize that person is you. So I remember growing up being very self-conscious and really, really wish I had fit in. But if I had fit in, I wouldn't have grown up and developed into the person that I am today.
Did you reach a point in your life where you felt like things changed and you fit in now? Or did you reach a point where you said, I don't care. I'm just me?
I think I reached the point when I said, I don't care. Because even when I came down to Los Angeles, which is a very, very diverse city, but in the entertainment industry, as a dancer, if you're auditioning for a job, out of 10 people, there would be 8 white people or 7 white people, and what we call the token Asian, the token Hispanic, and the token Black person. So you have a group of girls auditioning for one spot. So you find that even in LA, where it is diverse, you still feel left out. So I just got to a certain point, I don't really care anymore. This is who I am. I'm happy being who I am. And my husband would always say, when you get envious and when you look at someone else that, God, you think they have so much and you want to be them, stop and ask yourself, do you want to switch places with that person? And the answer is always no. I'm very happy with who I am and what I've developed and blossomed into. So as I get older, I start to realize it doesn't matter if you fit in or not. As long as you're doing good things for the world, it doesn't matter a bit what people think about you, right? I'm sure you have the same issue in New Jersey too, right?
Yeah, I grew up in a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood. There were very few Asians in my class.
And did they all think you know karate?
When you talk to people, what's that?
I said, did they all think you knew karate?
Probably.
Probably, right? And you can use that to your advantage, right?
Yes. My dad used to tell me when I was growing up that, like, in his neighborhood, sometimes there were, like, some tough characters, and he would just walk around going like this, and no one would bother him.
What is it, puppy? Oh, I'm talking to Andy. No, you want to just wave for hello since you came in? Come wave.
Oh, yeah, sure.
My husband.
Was that Perry?
Yes.
Hey, Perry.
Hi,
how are you?
This is Andy.
Hi, Andy. How
Etty is making you out like she's. I'm doing great. She's talking about you, and you sound like a philosopher to me with the wisdom that you have. Sage.
Doing good?
I'm good. Cool. All right. I love you. I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, darling.
Okay. Bye.
Good to meet you, Andy. Take care.
Good to meet you. Right on. Cameo from Perry Farrell.
So my
dad would just walk around. He would walk around like this, and he said no one would bother him because they thought that he was Bruce Lee.
That's amazing. That is fucking amazing. That's clever, right? Did you try it? Did it work?
It never really worked for me. I don't think that apparently I did not do it convincingly enough.
You need
maybe I didn't believe it myself. You have to believe.
That's right. Yeah. You need to commit.
You got to do it with conviction.
Yeah.
So getting back to being a ballet dancer auditioning for these big music acts, again, you must have felt a little bit like you didn't fit in.
Oh, I never fit in.
But was it super fun?
Oh, it was super fun.
What was that like, though, going on tour with these huge acts?
Well, the only time I actually felt fit in and I thought it was right for the job was, of course, it was cultural I can't say the word, but you know what I mean.
Appropriation?
Cultural appropriation, right. English is still my second language, so forgive me. The one time that I felt like I fit in was, of course, when Madonna was dressed as a geisha. So all the girls she hired were Asian. And it was the first time I felt like I'm with my people. And as a rite of passage, I felt like every Asian dancer in Los Angeles had to do Paris by Night. What it is that it was a Vietnamese production where they have all these Vietnamese singers, and they would hire dancers, and they would put out videos and stage shows, and they were huge. If you walk into any restaurant in the United States, any Vietnamese restaurant in the United States, there will be a Paris by Night poster on the wall. So I kind of, did fit in some jobs. And of course, they would always have that one white token girl. So there you go. The tables have been turned. But walking in, auditioning for these big people, as any dance audition, when you're going in for a big job with a big crowd, will always be very intimidating. But I got to a certain point that I knew when I audition for these jobs, I don't need to compete with the white girls. I need to compete with the Asian girls. So, and there weren't that many of us. So it made it a little less intimidating. And very interestingly enough, there's this huge record label mogul. He's like a billionaire now, head of one of the biggest record labels. He once said to me, it's not necessarily looking for an Asian person. In the entertainment industry, they're looking for that one girl that doesn't necessarily look Asian, meaning they will hire like a Filipino or like a Hispanic woman that could pass for Asian. So you have one girl that can be Asian, that can be Hispanic. So that's the kind of character they go for. But when it comes down to Asian characters, they generally, especially in acting, thank you, especially in the acting world, in commercial world, acting world, they want you to look Asian. The more pedestrian Asian you look, because they need to hire that one Asian person. So it had to be more convincing. And I knew that growing up, even in Hong Kong, I didn't quite look like everyone else. So a lot of times I would be told that I wasn't Asian enough to get the part. So I know. And I said, what do you mean? I was born and raised. I can speak the language. But they wanted a girl that really looked Asian, like with beautiful straight hair, the really like beautiful slanty eyes and the big lips. It's okay. I found my own way.
How did that make you feel when they tell you you're not Asian enough? And you're like,
How
I'm
do you
Asian.
think it made me
What do you
feel?
want from me?
Terrible. What do you mean I'm not Asian enough? Like I said, I was born and raised. I speak the language. I'm probably more Asian than most of the women that are auditioning for the same part because I speak the language. I was born there. But at a certain point, again, you just realize, hey, maybe I was born to take a different path. Maybe it's just meant that I have to work a little harder and have to prove myself a little more to get to the same place as other people.
Etty, you've danced with Jane's Addiction for many years. You've sang with Jane's Addiction for many years.
Yes.
You married Perry, who we got to see.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the stigma of being a wife and a performer.
Oh, God, it is a big stigma. And it's really, really, really terrible because what is the one woman, the one name that comes to your mind when you talk about an Asian woman that married into a band? Yoko Ono. And trust me, I have been compared to her, but only when it's bad. Only when it's bad, it would be my fault. But It's difficult. Being a rock wife is difficult enough because people have certain imageries about you. But you have to remember, for most rock wives, when the husband goes on tour, it is the woman that holds the house down, children, organize the house, make sure the house is standing, bills are paid. It's an actual job. It's not so much as, oh, I just am a rock star wife and my job is to be beautiful and be a trophy. There's so much more that goes into it. I don't think people understand. Now you add into a working environment. It is very, very challenging. I find myself having to prove myself to say, no, I did not get this job because I'm married to the singer. I got this job because I'm qualified. And it's been a very hard battle. But I feel like, again, after so many years, at a certain point, I know why I'm here and I know how I got here. And if they don't think so, that's not my problem.
Well, to your credit, I heard in an interview, Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah.
I think he was talking to Howard Stern with
Yes.
Perry. And
Yeah.
both of them were reflecting on the difficult childhoods that they had.
Yep.
And Billy had very complimentary things to say, saying that both he and Perry found stable relationships, found happy relationships with strong women who could build a home that could make them like successful as adults, right? Especially given the challenges that they had in their childhoods.
And I think that interview was from yesterday, or a couple of days ago, because I remember I was there at 5 a.m. Okay. Moving on from that, it was so early. But I do remember Billy said the first time he saw Perry was in 89, and he was just wobbly because he had a huge love for drugs. So he had spent his whole life being very, very messy. And I was young when I married him, but I felt like I brought a grounding purpose to his life. You're no longer a rock star just chasing pleasure, chasing your art. You have a wife and children to have to worry about. It's time you come back down, and you have to now bear down and be the best man you can, because it's not just about you anymore, it's everyone else. And I do remember when we got married, you know what, Billy Corgan, it's nice that he said that, but I remember in 2007, so Perry and I had been married for 5 years, he sat down next to me, he said, I have to say to you, I have to be honest, I didn't think your marriage would last. So, and it did. So now 20 years later, I am still here. And he ended up marrying an Asian girl to boot, because he knows that fucking we bear down and we get shit done. Your mom probably gets shit done, right? She runs the house, she gets shit done.
Oh, Asian moms get stuff done.
Yes,
Big
yes,
time.
they do. Yes, they do. And I feel like at a certain point, for a man, it is not necessarily a good look if they don't settle down. Look at Mick Jagger. I mean, he is very old and decrepit, and he's still running around trying to be that rock star. It's not a good look. And there are several musician friends that we know that are not married, and you can tell that they don't have a partner to bounce things off of. And with rock stars, they have huge egos, and they're also very insecure. So there's a certain way to speak to them to bring the best out in them. And with big egos and insecurities, they tend to go around in a circle in their heads with everything. So you need to ground them. And I can tell the difference between a musician, a man that doesn't have a wife, or one that does. It's a completely different way of approaching life, especially when they are older. I'm not sure if you're married, but you look very young, so you have plenty of time to get to that point. But just make sure you're married by the time you're 50. 50.
I think I'm a few years older than you, and I am married. I have 3 kids.
Wow, congratulations.
I
You
just
look
turned
so
50.
young.
I just turned 50.
Yes, you're a couple of years older.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
It's this frosty lens that I have. It's this frosty Sybil Shepherd lens that makes me,
I always
shine.
say that. I always say that high def is no one's friend. I look better in black and white and grainy, preferably moving really fast across the camera, and I fucking look great.
Okay, so we know that you are a performer, an artist, a wife, a mom. It sounds like you're also a psychologist and coach. Talk about the mindset shift that it takes going from being a dancer and backup singer to being a lead singer. Do you have the ego of the lead singer syndrome that you were kind of talking a little bit about?
I don't know if I'm working.
Do you
on
have
it.
the big ego?
I don't have a big ego. I've always been very, very happy playing the supporting role, but at a certain point, I feel like that when I got married at 27, 28, and we had children immediately, I really gave up my dreams and my ambition to raise my children and to be a good wife, to be supportive. And with Perry and I, we are equal partners in a lot of the business, including Lollapalooza, most of his entities. So with that being said, I feel like now that my kids are older, I want now a shot to go into the game and see what I could have accomplished if I didn't take 20 years off. And I know that it's a bit of a battle because I am older, but I do believe that, I remember Rita Ora talked about it around the Grammys. Why should there be an age limit for women when there isn't one for men? And a lot of the pop artists, by the time they get to their late 20s, including Rita, they are being turned out and a new group of young girls come in. But why can't women have the same level of success? As someone said, and I quote, Sean Connery was sexy until the day he died, right? But why can't women be the same? It should be the same. So I'm hoping that as my kids are older, they're 20 and 17, and I am moving away from a motherly role, I want now something for myself. And it's going to take a couple of years for me to get back that drive, that ego. But and at the same time, I know that whatever I'm trying to do for myself, if there's a crisis, an emergency in Perry's camp, I have no issue forsaking what I am doing to support him. Because at the end of the day, I am where I am mostly because of my husband. And he's counted on me for 20 years.
You deserve to have your second act.
I do
your
too,
second
right?
act, to have your chance. Yeah. And I'm wondering, when you're front woman with a band behind you, audience in front of you, do you need to step into a persona where you have that ego? Or can you just be yourself?
I think I just want to be myself. I wanted to be myself. I feel like now that I am much older, I don't think I need a persona. I have lived through all the personas, and I feel like all the personas are really a part of me. So I can just be myself and I can enjoy and take me as I am. If you don't like me, then that's okay too.
Well, I imagine being a performer since the age of 3, you have that within you.
I do.
You might not
Yes.
be like a difficult, challenging, big ego, but as a performer, you have that. You have that ability.
Yes, and part of the reason why Perry pursued me and married me was when we first met in 1997. I auditioned for Jane's Addiction. And I remember at the callback. Now you have to understand, when I auditioned for Jane's Addiction, I had no idea who they were. I knew the 2 songs we had to dance to, and that's the 2 songs I listened to. He chased me out into the parking lot, and he was checking out what I was driving. And God forbid I had driven one of those Hondas, or like a Honda Civic, or like a Toyota Tercel. Remember those cars? It's so Asian with like the spoiler. No, I had an American heavy metal. I had a Trans Am with T-tops, right? So I remember, what else I saying before I got into cars? Because I do miss that car so much. Can you repeat that question? I forgot. I lost my train of thought. I just started remembering my really
I was
wonderful car
asking
that I had to
you.
give up. You don't remember?
I don't remember what I was asking you.
Wait,
because now I'm distracted by your Trans Am.
Me too. I remember that day. That was such a beautiful car. Auditioning. Let's go back. I was auditioning. Oh, this is what it is. He said that part of the reason why he pursued me, and he would say that he pursued me for 3 years when it was only a year and 9 months. Part of the reason why was because in his head, and at that time, he was a very heavy IV drug user. He said that I knew if I hitch my wagon to yours, you would take me very far because you have the discipline and you have the drive. So now that I'm all grown up, I still have the same discipline. I work out when everyone's quiet and asleep, including my dogs, my husband, my kids. I start working out at around midnight. And I make myself do certain things every night before I go to sleep. I'm very, very disciplined when I want to be. So I feel like that was part of what attracted him to me, and that will always be inside me. So maybe I don't necessarily have that big ego, but I do know I have focus, I have discipline, and hopefully my husband seems to think so, but I think you have to say certain things to your wife. He said that I have that certain je ne sais quoi. So we'll see.
Tell us about this single that you just released.
Oh,
He's a Rebel.
He is a Rebel, which my husband picked out because he thought it was very appropriate. For my first single, it's appropriate because he changed the lyrics from he's no rebel to he's a rebel. So even my first single, I'm still singing about him. So ego, right?
Yeah. Like, why a song from the 1960s before our time?
Because
I know Perry picked it, but how did you latch on to this song?
Because it is so darling. Back in the day when women would sing together and they have those choruses and they have the harmonies and they dress up in little outfits. And I thought that time, it was a time of innocence. So much so that the landscape of music was very equal opportunity. They were okay with a male front person, but they were also okay with a female front person. And it was just a fantastic song, a fantastic time period to step back into. Plus, it was in my range.
Was it
and I could
recorded
sing
during the
well.
pandemic? Well, that's a good reason.
Yes, that was a good reason too. We had nothing to do. We just had our house, our dogs, our kids, and the studio. It was during the pandemic, and we shot the video during the pandemic too.
What did that recording process look like? You're no stranger to working with amazing musicians.
No, that process. So we have a recording studio in our downstairs. It's not necessarily the basement. It's just very conveniently located across the hallway from our wine cellar. So that's where your recording studio is, across from the booth. We have this incredible, one of the best, most dedicated, easy to work with engineers. So we brought Dustin in, and he just recorded me, and he allowed me to try out different passes, try out different ways of delivering a certain line. And with that, I grew my personality. I put in my personality into the song, and Perry input some stuff with some suggestions. So we had the luxury of time. So it was perfect to record the first single for my first solo song because we had the time to experiment.
I love that. So what will you be doing next? Will you be touring and promoting your music, your own music?
Right now, we are rehearsing for Porno for Pyros, which is the other band that Perry has, and we're doing a show in Daytona, and we also have a Jane's Addiction tour coming out with the Smashing Pumpkins. But in between, we have shows, these standalone parties, events called Heaven After Dark. And that's where we do our solo songs and a few songs from Kind Heaven Orchestra and Satellite Party, which are the two bands that Perry and I worked with together since 2007. The next one coming up is June 17th. No, I lied. Somewhere in July, because we had to move the date. I want to say July 7th. And we basically take over a space, and we have different artists. And we also wanted to do it more of an immersive, all-encompassing entertainment evening event experience rather than a show. So we are planning on doing those shows six times a year, at the very least every season. So that's when I get to step up and be the lead singer and be myself, and not necessarily working with Perry on his project. This would be my project, and that is Heaven After Dark.
So sometimes you'll be performing with Pornos for Pyros, or you'll be performing with Perry, but then you also have moments where you get to shine.
Yes. Best of both worlds, right?
Best of both worlds. Yeah. Well, I think that the two of you have been working together for so long and working well together for so long.
Yes, we've been
so
working
it's really
together.
Just a continuation.
Yep, we've been working together since 1997. And unfortunately, in 2004, when I had my second child, Perry lost Lollapalooza and Jane's Addiction within 2 days. We were a week away from bankruptcy, and we rolled our sleeves up. He started booking as a DJ, and I went with him as his tour manager to coordinate flights and all that. So we really worked and built ourselves together. And that's when we started Satellite Party. So it started with him writing with his musician friends. And I would bring, refreshments and food in. And he's one time said to me, why don't you lay a few background vocals for me? I did. And he realized I can sing. And we started developing Satellite Party together. So prior to recording He's a Rebel, we've already had satellite party, and that was a record that came out on Columbia Records. And we also have kind of an orchestra, which was another record that came out on BMG. So it has been a process, an evolution of me singing behind him, with him, and now I'm coming out on top as my own.
I didn't realize that this is like a financial comeback story too. I didn't realize that there were dark days.
Oh my God, it was so dark. We lost Lala. Like I said, we lost Lala and Jane's Addiction within 2 days. And there goes the majority of our income. And we also just had our second baby. We were a week away from bankruptcy. And I remember Perry said to me, "You are still young." I was 29 at the time. You're still young. You're still beautiful. I'm going to suggest you leave me and find someone else that can support you and give you the life and the lifestyle that you deserve, that I thought I could give you. And I said, that's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Absolutely not. We're in this together. And just think about this. A year and a half ago, I didn't even know who you were. I love you. I married you for the person that you are. Sell the house. We'll go back. We'll get a 2-bedroom apartment. I will go back to go-going, dancing, bartending, and you start building yourself up. We'll make it. And through perseverance and hard work and focus, we built up, and of course with a lot of luck and kindness from people who wanted to help us out, not financially, but with opportunities. We started with one Lala, and I do remember the Lollapalooza in Chicago was approved in April of 2005-06, and the festival took place in August. We had 4 months to put together a festival in Grant Park in Chicago. And I remember we started with basically just one part of the park, 4 baseball diamonds. And the newspaper came out the next day. It's a 2-day festival. After the festivals, grown men wept, our partners wept. At the front page of the Chicago Tribune said, "Success Palooza." We cried. That's when we knew there's a future. And we built from one Lala to South America, 3 in South America, Paris, Stockholm, Berlin. Now we have 7, and we're working on Mumbai for 2023. So we're growing, and it's all because we stuck with it, and we worked as a team. So it is a really wonderful way of building, and I do feel that it strengthened our relationship. And of course, being that money wasn't always plentiful, I don't know if that's the right word, around, we had very, very lean years with our kids growing up. So, and we sent our kids to public schools, and I feel that it really gave them a sense of what it's like to work for what you want. I think it instilled in them a sense of, I don't want any handouts. I want to work for myself. So my older son worked as a dishwasher, worked as a busboy, worked as a pizza parlor. He did manual labor gardening, and he enjoys it. And he understands that he doesn't want us to put him, in a position at Lala, in a position at this company, at that company. He really wanted to work from the ground up. He would not use our credit cards until I insist and say, you need to have one of our credit cards in case of an emergency. If you're caught somewhere, you can always rent a car, get a flight, so to speak. So they have become very independent and very well aware of the value of money. And that I'm very, very proud of, because I see some of our peers, some of their children just may not quite have the same value. And understanding that not everyone has that privilege. And most importantly, the people that may not have the same privilege that are working, they are people, and you have to be respectful and kind to them.
Etty, in that moment when Perry said, "You're young, you're beautiful, you should go and, find a better path."
Yeah.
He didn't have the vision in that moment. Did you have a vision, or were you just like, "We're sticking together, we're going to figure this out"?
Together, we're married for better or for worse, for richer for poor, in health and sickness. We are in this together. What kind of person would I be if at the first test of my commitment, I run? And it's not me. If I commit, I'm committed. It's going to be you and me for the rest of our lives. We're going to make this work. We're going to either rise together, or we're going to be in a 2-bedroom apartment for the rest of our lives. But I also know that Perry, at that time, as a broken man, of course, it's going to take him a little bit of time to see outside of the devastation, because he did lose 2 very important things in his life. 2 things that he spent his whole life working for collapsed back to back within 2 days. It would have taken him a minute, but he did come out on top. And I've always believed that if I just hang in there and I had that fall for him, he will rise. He just needs someone to believe in him, someone to push him and to drive him a bit. And besides, like I said, he's a big ego. He wouldn't have stayed out for long.
Well, I'm glad for that, because I believe that he's one of the most unique artists of his generation. So it's hard to keep him down given his talent.
Yeah.
I know that the two of you are really big on spreading the message of love and kindness.
Yep.
After going through like tough times and good times, what is your vision as a couple and as artists?
I honestly have said to Perry, I really wish that we have so much money that we can just help everyone we can. I wanted to be successful, keep working on our success, and have enough money that we can be really helpful to society, to people in need. And that's what we're working for. I would tell my boys, I said, people always come to you needing help. It's better to have been taken advantage of than to have the opportunity to help, to be of service to others, and not take it. But then there are people, I've realized in the past 5-6 years, that will keep bleeding you dry. But you also have to remember self-preservation. You can't just focus on one person, because there are many other people in need. So that's what I'm trying to teach my children. It's not just about yourself. You spread the wealth. And that's what I would love where we can be financially. I mean, how wonderful, what a privilege and honor for some of these wealthy men, like the billionaires, that can commit to giving away 90% of the wealth in their lifetime. I mean, what a privilege to be able to help, to really help people, to make a difference in this world.
I hear you're like my wife, and
Yes.
really big on, getting rid of single-use plastic bottles, reuse, like recycling. What are some of the causes that are most near and dear to your heart?
Well, of course, the environment. I do feel that the world is in danger. Yes, I understand from some of the non-believers in climate change. They do say that the climate does change throughout history. There's been mini ice ages, this and that's happening. However, I do believe that we are not being respectful and kind, not only to our planet, which by the way isn't ours to take. We should be committed, every single one of us should be committed to leaving the earth a better place than we came into it, right? But as far as the environmental is concerned, I do believe that if we really work together, if we are more conscious, for example, the last tour, I did not allow single-use plastic water bottles. I went and bought everyone a very nice water filter to take on the road. At my home, yay, right? Yay. Now imagine if every production does that. Everyone has their own water filter, but not like the big water filter, but in a bottle that you can just take with you. I bring water filters with me when I go on a trip. I remember, God, this has been a thing for me. I mean, growing up in Seattle, we've always been very, very in tune with the environment. So that had a lot in shaping me into how I am today. We don't have any single-use plastics. I'm a big recycler. I do believe that a lot of the problems when it comes to human beings, the human population, is the lack of clean drinking water. So we've been talking about with this one man that does water, and he basically goes into these villages, in Africa, in, these places where they don't have access to clean water, and he builds a water filter, a water scenario for them. And, it's just something that we all really need to be aware of. And single-use disposable stuff should not be allowed. We did that in the 90s. We did that in the 2000s. Now we're in 2020. We know better now. So for example, when we do Lollapalooza, we were the first festival in 2005, I want to say 2006, that we allowed people to bring a water container in, and we had water filling stations all around. So they're allowed to bring in their own water bottle to fill in water stations. And we tried using the box water. And unfortunately, the paper box water seemed like a good idea, but on the inside, they still have a plastic lining to keep the water from seeping out. So that box is not recyclable. The only thing that's 100% recyclable is aluminum. And unlike glass, aluminum is very easy to recycle. So I believe this year at Lollapalooza, we will only have aluminum bottles to sell for water products. And I do think when you visit other countries, they are not as wasteful and as big on single-use items as we are in the United States. Unfortunately, in our country, there are lobbyists and, corporations that influence some of our legislatures. So, for a while, we were very involved with the NRDC. So they fight those laws on a much higher level, on the law level. But at the same time, we should also be working from the grassroots level to educate everyone.
I love that you're leading the way with the festival and leading by example, because I think that's how you inspire others to follow. And you can make a big impact just with one Lollapalooza festival, but then if another festival says, "Oh, that's a great idea," it just spreads.
Yes, and I believe we were one of the festivals to start carbon neutraling our patrons. And of course, you have the choice to choose if you want to carbon neutralize your portion. If not, we'll cover it.
Etty, I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
I think success is at the end of the night, at the end of your life, you can look back and be leaving this world or going to sleep with a sense of purpose, to know that you've contributed positively to the world, whether in the environmental sense, in the monetary sense, or in the art sense, where inspired people, or you sing a song, your performance, for that 4 minutes, for that hour performance, you provided them with a place of escape where they can forget about their worries and they're happy. So success would be to bring happiness to the people you come in touch with. However, like I said, environmentally, monetarily, artistically, to just bring happiness and have that person feel good about themselves, about the world, or just feel good. Yeah. How do you define success?
In the most simplest terms, I think if I can spend time with my family and those that I love and care about, and that we can together be happy and have some positive impact in our community or beyond, then we've done the right thing.
See?
You
Now
take care of
that's
your family, and then
Yeah.
you see if it can like emanate outward.
Right. See, now there's you, me, and your wife. That's 3 people that's on board to just spread love, kindness, and happiness. Now, if everyone can jump on board, right? What a great world we'll live in.
We'll keep spreading the love and wealth. So tell the Inspired Money listeners and viewers where they can follow you and listen to your music and buy your single. Tell them where they can follow you.
I will. Oh God. I am on Spotify. So Spotify under Etty Lau Farrell, Instagram Etty Farrell, Facebook Etty Lau Farrell. It's basically everything under my own name.
Thank you, Etty Lau Farrell.
Thank you. See, I didn't have a middle name, so I used my last name as my middle name.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? In this interview, the power of partnership shined bright. I had no idea about their lean financial years and how staying together to rebuild strengthened their relationship. I love how they live in alignment with their values and pass that on to their children. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment, please post a comment or share it in the Inspired Money Makers Facebook group at inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. Thanks for tuning in to the end. Be sure to subscribe to my email that goes out every 2 weeks. It's investment focused, and the Runnymede investment team highlights data, news, and events that we think are worth sharing. Subscribe at inspiredmoney.fm/newsletter. Thank you for joining me on this mission. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.